Super Rugby Power Rankings for round number 6. I have had a look at the numbers, punched the teams in, and there's a substantial bit of movement for some teams. Some teams kind of steady as she goes. Again, it's one of those weeks where I look at it and go, not that sure. So I've done a bit of self-doubt, self-analysis, but here we go. Here's the numbers. And as always, you guys can let me know your thoughts. Coming in at 15th, and it took 6 rounds to get there, but the familiar spot for the Sunwolves returns. They are back down into bottom spot. Started the season with a win, have proceeded to lose 4 games on the trot, not helped by the fact that they no longer are at least currently able to play at home. So yeah, but I still had to factor that most recent game in as a home loss because that's technically what it was. So yeah, it's a pretty unfortunate one for the Sunnies. In their last season, it looked like they may be going to go out on a little bit of a high, but then that's all kind of deflated rather quickly. So the Rebels will look back at that opening game and be pretty disappointed. But there it is. Sunwolves are down 1 to 15th. And to make life just a little bit worse, I guess, is the next opponent for them is the Crusaders. Next, the Lions. The Lions are down 2 spots into 14th. Pretty disappointing for them as well at the weekend. There were a few teams which left this weekend pretty disappointed. The Lions were definitely one. That was a game on paper that they at least may have semi-targeted, but in the end, they didn't really get close. So, pretty disappointing result. They have a chance to back it up against the team which traditionally hasn't been the best, but is having a good season, and that they're playing the Blues this weekend over here in Auckland. So, that prospect is looking a bit tougher now than it would have in the last kind of 5 years. So, Lions are at a low point, and the Blues are at a high point. So, they're two teams kind of changing fortunes, which is interesting because when I've in the past talked about the Blues being a tough team to support at times, some Lions fans have kind of reached out to me in the comments and said, well, look, our team used to be pretty poor and now they're pretty good. This is when they were, making Super Rugby finals regularly. And I guess things always have to keep ebbing and flowing. Next is the Waratahs. I think the only thing that's got them above the Lions, because they were pretty poor at the weekend as well, is the fact that the Waratahs win is more recent. Because I've started shifting the weighting of the results, so I'm putting less weight on older results. Yeah, so that's probably all that's doing it, because the Waratahs have not been any better. All these teams have the same record of 1 win and 4 losses. Waratahs were good for 40 minutes against the Chiefs and then an absolute capitulation. So deserving of a spot in the bottom row, unfortunately for the Tars. They play the Brumbies away next week, so maybe chance to get back on track. But the Brumbies are looking the best of the Aussie teams so far this year. And to round things out, another team with a 1 win and 4 loss record is the Highlanders. So it's a good mix. You've got a South African team, an Australian team, Japanese team, and a New Zealand team. So it's a good mix. Everybody's there in the bottom row. And it's not the Blues for a change. I feel sorry for the Highlanders, but as a Blues fan, it's kind of nice at the moment to not be a fan of the worst New Zealand team. That's the Highlanders at the moment. They've been pretty lackluster. They were gutted by the guys that left at the end of the season, but all teams were, to be fair, just to varying degrees. So yeah, the Highlanders haven't yet been able to make things click. We will see if their next game is the one where they get it done away to the Warriors, who have been kind of middling. Next, and this is an amazing jump, they were in 15th last week, the Bulls with 1 win. They've got the same record as well. All these teams have the same record, 1 win and 4 losses. The Bulls have snuck ahead on the table. Again, it's a recent win for them. It was a pretty decent win at home. Not all their losses have been terrible. Their loss to the Blues was very marginal. So, yeah, the Bulls have jumped up to 11th. there's not a lot between these teams. When I look at, I mean, the Sunwolves, I think, are clearly the worst. There's kind of a bit of a gap, and all these teams, there's not that much between them. The Bulls are slightly up a wee bit. There's one other team I should mention who all these teams are kind of in the same neighborhood. The Reds. Now, the Reds haven't changed. The Reds are the same, and they lost at the weekend as well. But, I mean, losing away to the Crusaders, and it was a one-try game, like, within it. The Reds actually scored more tries than the Crusaders. I've hardly marked them down at all for that loss. They've pretty much remained neutral. They did go down a very, very slight amount, but in terms of their overall position, they are there. So they've only had the one win as well, and they've actually had 5 losses. So they should be, in theory, at the bottom. But the manner of their losses, some of the games they've played, I figure they're better value, just the way I've been working things out. So, yeah, the Reds are there in 10th. They play the Bulls, and the Bulls play the Reds. So that actually works out pretty well. The Reds are at home, so in theory they should be favourites. And according to this, the Reds should get the job done. But it doesn't always work that way. We'll see how things go. Next, it's the Rebels. The Rebels are the same, actually, despite the fact that they got a win. They were kind of the best of the bad teams before, and some of the teams above them were quite a lot above them, but that gap's kind of shrunk a bit. Because when you look at these guys, the Highlanders, they are there in 8th spot. The Highlanders are also the same. But in the background, the gap between these teams is pretty much closed up, so there's not a lot between them. Both of those sides have a 50-50 record, so 3 wins, 3 losses. But based on the results, I've got the Highlanders slightly ahead of the Rebels, even though the Rebels win is a more recent one. But yeah, there's a few factors at play. So yeah, Highlanders haven't reached their potential for sure. The Rebels, they're the ultimate mixed bag team this season. They can lose to the Sunwolves and then, give other teams a run for their money. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things pan out for them. They are on the bye, the Rebels, so chance to recuperate and get the game plan sorted for the latter half of the season. And the Highlanders, like I mentioned, play the Highlanders, which for them at this point, with the Sharks and the Stormers both doing relatively well this season, becomes a very big game for the Highlanders. But likewise, the Highlanders, if their season's going to be salvaged, then they need to start picking up results as well. So it's still early to be saying teams are getting desperate, but you feel like they kind of are. Next, Hurricanes. Hurricanes down 2 spots after a home loss to the Blues. And they next travel to Hamilton to play the Chiefs. So that could get worse before it gets better. Discipline definitely cost these guys at the weekend. And yeah, they are, I think, rightly down. They are 3 wins and 2 losses. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed one as well, because they look like they could be a contender one week, and then, like the opening game of the season, they don't even score any points. So, again, another team which is kind of a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde one for the moment. Next one, and this is a bit unfair. It's a bit unfair, but I don't spare teams on the bye. The Stormers are down a massive 4 spots. The trouble for them is every team that I have ranked above them got a win at the weekend, which I think has spurred things on. Over the course of the season, naturally, that evens itself out. So, like the Rebels are on the bye this week. If the Reds and the Bulls and whatnot win, well, to be honest, the Reds are probably still a bit too far behind. There's a bit of a gulf between this lot and the rest, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. If the Highlanders lose, then they should go below the Rebels, because I'll be penalising them pretty heavily for that. But anyway, the Stormers were on the bye. They've dropped 4 spots. They're at 4 wins and 1 loss. Yeah, that loss to the Blues is a bit of a costly one. But now, in the scheme of things, maybe it doesn't actually look that bad, because maybe the Blues, he says hesitantly, maybe the Blues are a team to be reckoned with this season. Next, Brumbies are the top of the Aussie sides. I got them up 1 spot. I've pushed them up as far as I could based on the win. It was a big win. It was over the Sunwolves, so we kind of take that, I don't want to say with a grain of salt, but at least we don't take that as much as maybe another result might have gone, but still, Brumbies are looking pretty good. They've only lost the one game this year as well, and that was a close one. So 4 wins, 1 loss for them. Same record as the Stormers. They host the Waratahs. I forgot to mention that the Stormers are away to the Sharks, which in the South African Conference is an absolutely massive, massive game. Next, not quite top row. My Blues, they're uncomfortably high for me. I'm more used to talking about the Blues when they're down the other end of the board. The Blues are on a bit of a winning streak. They've won 2 games in South Africa and now 1 game away from home here in New Zealand, which hasn't happened a lot in recent memory for them to go on a streak. They could potentially go on a 4-game streak if they get a win over the Lions at home. They should beat the Lions at home based on the way both of these 2 seasons are going for these teams. That being said, it would be the ultimate Blues moment to put yourself in this, decent position on the log and then to slip up. But still, I'm proud of them. They're doing pretty well. They haven't even got Bodie yet. So, yeah, there's a lot to like about the Blues season thus far. Sure enough, they have 2 losses. They've got 4 wins, 2 losses. But I think when you look at the teams they lost to, I haven't put them on the board yet. And the scalps that they've claimed, it's 2 teams like here as well. I mean, I know they've beaten the Waratahs and the Bulls, so kind of 2 of the more lowly teams, but they've also beaten some decent opposition. The only teams they've lost to thus far are the proper contenders. So, yep. Blues are doing all right, man. Like I said, they got the Lions. Next, it's the Crusaders. No change for the Crusaders. It's another win. They play the Sunwolves away, like I said, but it'll be in Australia, so it's going to be before the Reds-Bulls game, which is nice. I think that the Blues moved their fixture so that the Aussie games could be kind of back-to-back rather than a game with a break, like a 2-hour break and then another game. So that's I think, pretty good. A bit of kind of community spirit or rugby spirit or something to organise that. But yeah, the Crusaders, they only scraped by the Reds. So they probably should have done a bit better than that based on the 2 teams on paper. But as I've said, despite the fact that the Reds probably have the worst record in Super Rugby just in terms of wins and losses, I don't rate them as a team that's all that bad. So, yeah, still, by the Crusader standards, they would have liked to have done a lot better in that game. They still did what great teams do, which is to get a win even when you're not clearly the dominant team. But, yeah, 3rd spot for them. Next is the Chiefs behind at half-time. That seems to be their thing. That's a little bit concerning, especially when it's the Waratahs, who thus far this season are a pretty lowly team. But sure enough, Chiefs do what they do and absolutely smack them around in that second half. That was about as one-sided as you get. It was men against boys in that second half. So imagine if the Chiefs can play that for 80 minutes. They will be a proper title contender. Their record is 4 wins and 1 loss. So all those teams from the Stormers to the Chiefs all have 4 wins. It's just the Blues that have got the 2 losses. All the rest just the 1. And finally, no change for these guys. I should say the Chiefs were up 2, by the way. The Sharks retain number 1 spot. These guys are looking very good. And I like the Sharks, man. If you've seen the fact that I've got a lot of rugby jerseys in my collection, if you didn't know this, that Sharks jersey I've got hanging there is the first jersey I bought of a team which I didn't directly follow. There wasn't a Blues or an Auckland or an All Blacks or something like jersey like that. The Sharks. So I'm quite keen to see the Sharks do well. Like the Blues, they tend to be a team that underperforms based on some of the big names they've got. But so far this season, I don't want to jinx them, but they are doing really well, and they are a really fun team to watch. They've got so many outstanding players. Every time I mention 4 or 5 of their guys in a video, someone will say, you didn't mention that guy. And it's true. Should have mentioned that guy as well. Notch is one that I've been guilty of not mentioning. Fussy at times, I've not been mentioning him. The team has been great, and they are good value for the top of the power rankings. 5 wins, 1 loss. As I said, Stormers at home. this weekend. I think that's kind of a must watch of all the other games this weekend. Is that the biggest game this weekend? Chiefs Hurricanes should also be a very good one. In terms of desperation factor, Waratahs Highlanders could be pretty good. Likewise, Reds Bulls, but I think the game of the weekend is probably the Sharks and the Stormers. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on the rankings. How would you have them if you were gonna do your version? Drop the video a like if you do like the power rankings. As I said, they are one of my favorite videos to do. Actually, I really enjoy seeing how things kind of pan out. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.